This is where it all ends. End of the road. What a life it was.
We are live here on the campus of Virginia Tech, the location of the deadliest shooting in U.S. history. 33 dead, 29 wounded, 15 still in the hospital tonight.
Do you think I wanted to do this? Do you think I've ever dreamed of dying like this in a million years? I didn't want to do this.
As I was walking here to see you, I passed a lady being accompanied by a state policeman who broke down, sobbing about losing her only child. That is the atmosphere here on campus tonight.
You had 100 billion chances and ways to have avoided today, but you decided to spill my blood. You forced me into a corner and gave me only one option.
You know, it's my understanding that police have uncovered quite a bit of material, including a very bitter and hateful letter in his dorm room.
You have vandalized my heart, raped my soul, and torched my conscience. You thought it was one pathetic void light you were extinguishing. Thanks to you, I die like Jesus Christ, to inspire generations of the weak and the defenseless people.
And when you see writings like that in letters, that indicates a motive. He was out to get somebody, but why was he out to get these people? There's 32 parents out there that want to know why this guy did this.
The time came. I did it. I had to.
Hello and welcome to I Could Murder a Podcast, the series finale of Series 10. We have made it, and I'm joined by, still with us, just by a thread, Ben Carter. How you doing?
Doing really well. Thank you so much for that audacious introduction. We made it to the finale, boys, which just feels like it's gone very quickly, actually. I was about to say it's been a slog, but it absolutely has not.
Your default is it's been a slog, but no, yeah, I agree. It has zoomed by. Producer Dan, how you doing today?
Very good. Feeling fresh, feeling bright. Yeah, end of the series. It feels a bit weird because it has shot by, but I've enjoyed it immensely. Probably my most favourite series to date.
I would echo that. I think it has been the most enjoyable to do. Some really varied cases. And yeah, from the reactions from the audience, you guys at home, it seems to be, a lot of people's favourites. So thank you so much for your support for this series. Greatly appreciated. And Series 10, au revoir.
Bonsoir.
Tschüss. German.
Yeah, nice.
Ooh.
I like yours made sense.
Arrivederci.
Yes, 10 series of the main channel, so 120 legit episodes, a couple specials on there as well, 120 episodes, boys. So I want to say a big thank you to producer Dan and Ben as well for coming on this journey with me, and for the audience as well. It's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those that don't know, if you're listening to us on audio, we also have a YouTube channel. You can come and watch any of those 100, how many episodes did you say, Tom?
120, but you can minus 18 because we didn't do visual for that series.
Okay. Well, either way, we are also a visual podcast, so come and have a look on YouTube. If you're watching for the first time, we're also on audio, so I don't know if that works that way, but, you might want to just pop us in your ears.
Little fun game. Pause it before we talk and try and guess who's who, because a lot of people say, I didn't expect that person to be that one. So that's always fun. But yes.
I had a comment on YouTube saying that I look posher than I sound.
I think you sound
relatively. You sound
relatively
posher than you look.
Maybe it was that. I'll check that. But
oh no, it wasn't me that commented.
Someone thought you were Ben by looks.
Really?
Nice. I'll take that as a compliment.
Okay.
I didn't load it either way. I'm just saying what was said.
Dan has a good voice, so I'll take it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you take it as a compliment, but Dan should take it.
Dan stayed quite quiet.
Sorry, I was concentrating. You are right. Dan sounds more posh when you look at him rather than when you can just hear him on Spotify.
Oh, so when you see the face with it feels posher, but if you just hear the voice, it's not.
I guess so.
That's interesting.
Thank you for that comment.
Yeah, comment again if you want. Anyway, this episode is, of course, it is the finale. It's one that me and Ben were saying the other day that we're very surprised it hasn't really featured in any of the audience votes. Hopefully it doesn't mean you guys don't want to hear about it. But it is, of course, the Virginia Tech shooting.
Yeah, we've steered away from school shootings, mass shootings for a couple of series now. We did do the Dylan Roof Charleston Church shooting in our audio-only series. We did do the Sandy Hook case a few series ago, and we have done the Christchurch mosque shooting over on the website. But it's, yeah, typically they always seem so heavy to research, and they are just so emotionally taxing. Saying that, so was last week, wasn't it? They're just so hard to comprehend, and I find them quite alien.
Yeah, I think, especially with this one we're going to go into, the sheer number of victims, and I think you have to really think about this. I know this sounds really like obvious, but you think about the amount of people, and then you think, okay, the immediate family, let's say 2 siblings and 2 parents, 4 people, and then you times that by the amount of victims, and you think just the wider family and just how big the ripple effect spreads, friends and other things, like how many people are affected by one person's actions, senseless actions. It's absolutely like just so heartbreaking, and I think sometimes you can get lost with this and just people become a number, which obviously we're very big on that not being the case. And I think it's important to cover these cases. Obviously we're not doing this in any way glorifying or anything like that when it comes to this, but I think it's important to discuss these cases. And sadly, obviously this case was a long time ago, so we'd like to say things have changed and lessons have been learnt, but sadly that doesn't seem to be the case, and obviously we'll get into that as we go through the episode.
Yeah, I think what seems to be very much a running theme with cases like this is the preventability and the warning signs that were there. With this one, I've never seen so many warning signs, but not only warning signs that were there, they were partially actioned, but it was then the fact that the looseness in aftercare and sticking to government guidance based on what would have been prescribed to this individual, it's so fucking frustrating.
I completely agree with you there. Sometimes with a red flag, it might be in the peripherals. You're like, is that a red flag? This is a red flag being smashed into your face repeatedly, and your blood going on the flag and make it even redder. And they've gone, oh, that's fine, we'll just leave. Literally, some points of it is absolutely... Dan, you're not too familiar with it, but there's one particular bit where you're just like, how aren't you looking at that and going, okay, this is a serious red flag. But without further ado, I think we'll get into the case.
So this week it is, of course, the case of the Virginia Tech shooting, also referred to as the case of Seung-Hui Cho, the deadliest school shooting in American history, the Blacksburg tragedy, the West Ambler Johnston shootings, the Virginia Tech massacre, and the Norris Hall shootings.
I do hate the fact my name's associated with this case.
Yep.
On the cold, snowy night of Sunday, April 15th, 2007, 23-year-old Seung-Hui Cho is in the final stages of preparing for what will go on to become the deadliest school shooting in American history. Isolated in his dorm room at Virginia Tech, he meticulously organises his weaponry, ammunition and clothing as he glances through the manifesto he's been working on for the last several months. Cho then checks and rechecks his guns, ensuring they are ready for when called upon the next day. He phones his family, and for a brief period in time, he is able to pretend that everything is completely normal. Cho's mind, by this point darkened and exhausted by many years of internal torment and apparent disconnection from those around him, races with heavily blurred sense of purpose. He sees himself as an avenger of wrongs, Axe Ishmael, and the anti-terrorist of America, wholeheartedly believing in a mission to punish a society that he feels has repeatedly assaulted him and betrayed him. As night wears on, Cho reviews his final video messages, watching himself speak directly into the camera with chilling calmness. His reflection stares back, captivated. In the tapes, Cho outlines his grievances and tries to justify the violence and terror he is about to unleash. He expresses genuine anger and hatred towards his peers and the world, convinced of a narrative in which he is the victim. Alone in his delusions, Cho prepares a package containing the videos and writings he will soon send to NBC News. With his manifesto complete and his plan set, he spends his last hours in eerie solitude, knowing that, when the morning comes, everything in his world and the lives of his many victims will have abruptly changed. How did numerous warning signs go unnoticed relating to the shooter's mental health issues and previous concerning behaviours? Why did it take more than 2 hours for students and teachers to be notified that there was an active shooter on campus? And what personal thoughts and feelings had the shooter allowed to build up over time to the point that it caused him to take such heinous and devastating actions?
Preparing for this case, there were so many sort of mishmashes. There's a little bit of Elliot Rodger in him. There's a little bit of Adam Lanza in him. There's a little bit of James Holmes in him. But I also thought, when we go through his final days and all these years of getting into his head, or him at least getting into his own head about what was going on in his world, there's a lot of similarities with a case we covered earlier this series in Ricardo Lopez, this delusion.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I saw, if you would have just given me the early life, apart from some key factors, but the early life of Cho, I think I would have predicted this case going a different way.
So what we're going to do is begin with the background to the events. We're going to do a bit of a deep dive into Cho's upbringing, his childhood, because there's a lot to unpack here before then moving on to our typical timeline of events. So Seung-Hui Cho was born on the 18th of January 1984 in the city of Asan, South Korea, which is a city known for its many natural hot springs and saunas. He was the youngest of two children born to Sung Tae and Hyang Im Cho, having an older sister called Sung Kyung. We're going to refer to him as Cho from this point onwards through to the rest of the episode, which also, he did occasionally go by that in school as well. So the working class Cho family lived in a 2-room basement apartment in the center of the city of Seoul for the first few years of Cho's life, where extended family members described him as a shy, quiet, emotionless, awkward, unaffectionate, and potentially selectively mute child. A young Cho would very rarely talk to his family, and he became extremely uncomfortable whenever he was held or picked up. He also struggled to initiate or maintain eye contact. When he was just 9 months old, Cho developed whooping cough, which was followed soon after by pneumonia. He was hospitalized for a number of months as a result. During his time at the hospital, doctors noticed an abnormality with his heart, which required surgery to repair over the following 2 years. This experience very much seemed to traumatize him. He was considered a very frail baby who became highly agitated when his parents attempted to hold him. He was also regularly sick with fevers and flu. It has been speculated that he may also have had growth and developmental delay, as he was very small compared to other babies and children his age throughout almost all of his life. According to Cho's great aunt, Kim Yang-soon,
from the beginning, he did not talk. Not to other children, not to his own family. Everyone saw this. The kid didn't say much and didn't mix with any friends. Yes, sir, was about all you could get from him. His mother agonised over his sullen, brooding behaviour and empty face. Talk. She just wanted him to talk. When I told his mother that he was a good boy, quiet but well behaved, she said she would rather have him respond to her when talked to than be a good and meek boy.
Cho's father owned a used bookshop whilst his mother helped look after and raise the family. The pair were introduced to one another in the form of an arranged marriage, with Cho's father previously working on oil fields and building sites in Saudi Arabia, whilst his mother came from a farming family who fled North Korea for South Korea during the Korean War. Unfortunately, the bookshop wasn't very successful. It only had one book and it didn't sell. It's terrible.
got any others? Got any more?
That's from the office, isn't it? Yeah. The paper shop. It's good for that. Unfortunately, the bookshop wasn't very successful, and so the family's finances were fairly unpredictable at times. Often during weekends, Cho's mother would attend her local church, where she would pray for two things: for the family to be in a more comfortable position financially, and for God to transform her silent son. Silent Son sounds like a good name for just a solo artist.
Christian rock band.
Silent Son. I actually think they'll do a world tour. Maybe I'll support them. You in there? You'd be my roadie.
Roadie?
Ben, I'm thinking you could do merch outside. Not official merch. Just
bootleg.
Knockoffs, yeah.
That's fine.
You in?
Yeah, I'm in.
Buying, selling.
Buying? What knockoff merch? Oh, okay.
Your tickets as well. You're
touting, yeah.
Touting and merching and half and half scarves.
Yeah.
And a front hand and a mouth to whoever. Okay. In 1992, when Cho was 8 years old, after several years of persuasion from relatives and waiting for visa approval, the family made the decision to immigrate to the United States. They initially settled for a brief period in Detroit, Michigan, as well as Maryland, before soon making their way to the suburb of Centerville, Virginia. After learning that this area was known at the time for having one, or if not, the largest population of South Korean expats in America. Both parents then started working for one of their uncle's dry cleaning businesses, predominantly working 14-hour shifts. Ooh, what's the longest shift that you've worked, Ben?
It's got to be somewhere
A
close
baker,
to that.
probably.
Oh, it was recruitment.
Oh.
We were prepping for something.
We'd be prepping, boy.
We were prepping. No, the baker shifts were quite strictly to schedule. You just did your 8 or 9 hours and then you went, which doesn't sound that strict, but...
You rolled the dough for the dough.
Yes, sir.
I left it on for too long. Dough. Sorry, I had a coffee. Sorry, cut that out. Whilst they enrolled their children in local schools and became members of the local Christian church, despite them having relatively little income at the time, they were able to purchase a $200,000 home in one of the nicer neighbourhoods, which would contradict Cho's later claims that he essentially came from a poverty and crime-filled ghetto.
Parents encouraged their children to regularly attend church, but Cho seemed to, in part, resent their religious beliefs. According to the pastor at the Centerville Korean Presbyterian Church, Cho had a good understanding of the Bible and was a smart student. However, he recalled that he never heard him say a complete sentence. His parents also encouraged them to befriend other South Korean children, and also American children at their school in the neighbourhood. Cho's sister seemed to have little to no problem with this, whilst Cho remained silent and alone. The family had hoped this significant relocation, change in lifestyle would help to make Cho a much happier and more confident child, but it did not seem to go to plan. One uncle recalled, "We thought that it would help the boy gain confidence if he moved to the United States Open Society. Sadly, it seemed to have the opposite impact."
Gain confidence. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, if someone's very reserved, moving to a culture which maybe is a bit louder and brasher. I don't know if that would, to me, make it, he'll grow up with that. And yeah, maybe, I don't know. That feels a bit of an interesting one.
Yeah, I thought when he later chooses which university he wants to attend, I also thought that was an odd choice given the dynamic, but it's, maybe putting him with other more confident, socially active children. Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, obviously it had the opposite impact, but I'm sure I can understand the parents' thought process with this.
Okay.
Sure.
Cho first attended Poplar Tree Elementary School, where his abilities, both academically and socially, seemed to contradict how he was painted later in life. He socialised well and was able to finish a 3-year course in 1.5 years, according to a former teacher. He was very interactive with other students and was pointed to as a model student by his teachers. As far as everybody was aware, absolutely no bullying took place during his elementary years, which Cho would later argue against.
Not long after settling in Centerville, the family gained their citizenship and became permanent residents of the United States. Cho's father continued to work as a presser at the dry cleaners, whilst his mother got a job at the local school's cafeteria in order to secure medical insurance for the family. Cho started attending Ormondstone Middle School before moving to Westfield High School. Westfield itself is actually one of the largest schools in all of Fairfax County.
Also a mall, Ben.
Is it also a mall?
Westfield do malls.
Oh. And there's also a Westfield, Philadelphia, where the Fresh Prince goes.
West Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, that's not real. Is that real? I wrote Uncle Phil earlier to try and get down in the script.
It's on my brain now, isn't it?
But Westfield, Adelphia, did you think it was?
That's a place, right? That's where the show's set. Fuck's sake. Anyway.
That's tremendous. That's just tremendous.
I am just a character. So he's done really well at junior school. He's now moved to an environment which is much larger, loads more children there, and there's a lot more things that might potentially overwhelm someone who already has, a fair amount of social difficulties. Apparently, whilst at Westfield, he was picked on for being so quiet, also picked on for his appearance, for being unable or unwilling to talk, for being, quote, small and scrawny, and for looking like he was a lot younger than his actual age. In class, whenever he was asked to speak as part of an assignment or even to answer roll call, he was mocked for his accent, his low, monotone voice, and inability to speak fluent English, which is, that's horrific, if it happened. Because again, the whole thing about this case is, I've seen comments to suggest he was actually a bit of a bully. But at this point in his life, he's relocated to a new country, he's learning the language. You can imagine there may have been some breakdowns in communication at this point, but that's obviously no reason for a kid to be picked on.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, we all know kids can be absolute arseholes, and any sign of weakness, they can prey upon it. But as we said, it's been very much disputed, the idea that he was heavily bullied, and if anything, he had a bit of bite about him himself. So it's hard to know which side to believe, because maybe he was, and maybe the teachers weren't able to see it. Maybe he wasn't telling his teachers or his parents about it at the time. So, yes, it's hard to know exactly what happened.
One anonymous family member said the following.
Every time he came home from school, he would cry and throw tantrums, saying he never wanted to return to school. But he would never look for attention, sympathy, or even consoling. He never made eye contact and never moved to embrace you.
Outside of school, Cho would regularly retreat to his bedroom and play video games, watch television, or occasionally go and play basketball by himself on the courts local to his neighbourhood. As well as this, his family would enrol him in a local martial arts club. When anybody attempted to play with him or even walk by and say hello to him, he acted completely as if they were not there. One of his next-door neighbours said that he always had the appearance of having a, quote, completely broken heart from a very young age. And if any family friends or new people visited the family home, Cho would go pale, start crying, start breaking out in a sweat, and plead to go to his room. Which again, you just take that maybe as extreme social anxiety rather than any other. I'm not necessarily an expert in the field, but it just strikes me
you're
as...
definitely not an expert in the field, I don't say.
Thank
not
you.
necessarily.
Yeah, no, definitely. You're definitely not an expert in this field, but it's just, yeah, surely if that, I mean, I was a very, very shy child. I would, if I went to the shops, I would always get my younger brother or whoever I was with to go and purchase things on my behalf. I wouldn't like to deal with people at the counter.
What kind of stuff?
I remember the first time I did it, I bought a Game Boy game and I got my cousin to go and buy it for me. It was a little Oddworld Abe's Odyssey Game Boy Advance game.
Okay.
Follow me. But it was a big purchase at the time. I think it was about 20-30 quid.
I remember being on holiday and really wanting Warzone, WWF Warzone, and thinking about it all the time.
Yeah.
Very obsessive with that. But yeah, I mean, I think from this point, obviously there's no red flags at this point. It's just it's a very sad little boy, essentially, who's going through a difficult time. And yeah, there's obviously some anxiety and maybe some further issues that he's going through. Obviously, hindsight is a wonderful thing. You think maybe intervention with therapists and I think counsellors at this point might be of some use to get some coping mechanisms to deal with these certain situations. But in the mid to late 90s, I think there was a bit more stigma around the thought of counselling and the thought of speaking about what you're going through. So maybe it wasn't as readily available.
Oh yeah, and especially from that family as well. Like their home country, it would be considered something to be maybe ashamed of, or
swallow your feelings, keep pushing it down.
Yeah, very sad.
In his teenage years, he was suspected of being either selectively mute, incredibly socially anxious, or having some form of mental illness by his peers and family members. Parts of this were later confirmed when, at the end of 8th grade, Cho was diagnosed with selective mutism and social anxiety disorder, both of which he was allegedly bullied for and was also racially prejudiced on at least one occasion. His family and friends have speculated that these diagnoses were related to him potentially having autism or perhaps Asperger's syndrome, but no diagnosis was ever made. I'm not going to say Asperger's, so come at me in the comments. I will never say Asperger's.
It's a P, not a B.
It always gets me when I watch any shows like Asperger's. It absolutely grinds my gears down.
Is it? More than Hollybobs? Definitely.
No, I think Asperger's gets me more. It's more like, if that was the way to pronounce it, it's like, give it a different name. It's like if you're going for something that's hard enough, then let alone being called Asperger's. Like cock sandwich. It's like, I'm not going to call something that, are you? So it's just, jeez. That's just my 2 cents. That's just my 2 cents, Dan.
Fair enough, man.
Do what you will.
And Ben.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and Ben.
I've watched like American videos. I've never really heard it be pronounced as Asperger's. I've always Asperger's.
Would you eat an Asperger if it was because you like meat? Would you be put off if it was like, oh, this bit of the burger comes from the butt? Would you still be like, yeah, all day? If anything,
I don't know. Maybe I've had one without realizing. I don't know where my beef comes from. Or cow.
I wasn't talking about beef. Anyway, around the same time in July of 1997, Cho's family sought therapy and medication to try and help him with selective mutism. When his teachers were informed, he was excused from all group discussions, verbal presentations, and also placed into a special education class under the category of emotional disturbance. He would continue to receive mental health as well as speech therapy and art therapy through his junior year. Art therapy sounds nice.
Yeah, he basically was given like, what's the word? Like building, is it building clay or what the word for clay where like Wallace and Gromit use it?
Oh, plasticine.
kind of like plasticine, but I think there's like, is it builder's clay or something? Creative clay? I don't know. But basically,
sounds fun.
he was given, this was a really good way for him to, have some form of outlet, to be able to potentially, communicate through this art. And he would make different statues out of this clay or whatever we're going to call it.
Sculptures.
Play-Doh, maybe. Clay-Doh. But anytime he was then asked questions about, well, what have you built? Why have you built that? What's that supposed to be? He would just apparently, there'd be no verbal response. It would all be just very immediately upset, immediately start crying.
Cho, not another fucking cock again. Jesus sake. I like the way you use the blue clay for the veins, but...
Fucking hell.
Those family were not at all aware of his deeper psychological issues he was going through.
Modelling clay.
Maybe we should get you some.
I'd love that.
And as Ben mentioned, perhaps his parents viewed this as something to be ashamed of, with the stigma surrounding his mental health from South Korea. He became more depressed, more resentful, and started to harbour dark and disturbing thoughts. On the 20th of April 1999, when Cho was just 15 years old, the Columbine High School massacre occurred in Littleton, Colorado. This made major news across the country for many weeks at the time, causing the young Cho to become completely fixated on the events. Subsequently, he started to idolise the perpetrators. 18-year-old Eric Harris and 17-year-old Dylan Klebold. Months later, Cho wrote in a school assignment in an English class he wanted to cause a repeat Columbine. The school contacted Cho's older sister, who then helped to translate and report the incident to the parents. Cho wouldn't talk about his writings to any of his family, and he was soon sent to regularly see a psychiatrist who diagnosed him with major depressive disorder. He was prescribed paroxetine, which he stopped taking after 1.5 years. So Dan, that's the red flag I was saying about smashing in your face. So actually literally saying and writing he wants to repeat Columbine. You could argue obviously putting him into therapy is to address that. And what else could they do? I guess that's the question. What else could the parents do or the school do to combat that from the writing? But that for me is obviously the major one.
Yeah, you're right. That's a very, very red flag.
Yeah, there's a few more coming up that just get more and more elaborate and bizarre. But one thing I'd heard about this particular psychiatrist, which I've never heard before in a case, is that apparently they entered into a safety contract. So Cho and his psychiatrist agreed a safety contract, which is basically an individualized agreement that is tailored to suit the needs of each patient and their clinical situation. It basically means we are agreeing this safety contract that you will not harm yourself, put anyone else in it, yourself or anyone else in a dangerous situation, or harm anyone else, and you'll seek help as soon as you feel those urges or feelings come on. And I just never heard of a safety contract.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because some people, I mean, obviously if someone's going to do something like this, they're not going to go, oh, sign that contract, can't do it. Maybe some people with certain morals or certain fixations or compulsions think that because they've done that they can't do it. I don't know, maybe there's a block in their kind of thinking than me. But yes, that's interesting. I haven't heard of that before either, but I would question probably how beneficial that is.
After finishing Westfield High in 2003, Cho enrolled at the scene of his infamous future crimes, Virginia Polytechnic Institute State and University, more commonly known as Virginia Tech at Blacksburg, Virginia. He moved almost 4 hours away from his parents' home and took up accommodation in student halls on the campus. His family had placed a strong emphasis on education, and this was further outlined when his older sister was accepted to attend Princeton. He informed them that he wanted to study business technology, but changed that to study English in wanting to become a writer after his grades started to drop. Despite this change, his grades continued to fall even further. Cho continued to struggle once again at Virginia Tech. Not only was he still struggling to adjust to general life in America, he was also struggling with cultural differences and language barriers, and also found it extremely difficult to form friendships, particularly with those of the opposite sex. During the same time, he seemed to start to slightly resent his family for putting him in this position. It seemed to be their fault that he was now in America, now being bullied, and now suffering. To counter this point, other students argued that his peers and his teachers always did their best to be inclusive of him, but that in general he avoided this and preferred to remain somewhat of a loner. A classmate once offered him $10 to just say hello, but got nothing. During the first day of a literature class, Cho wrote his name down as ? On an attendance sheet, which actually led to some of his peers saying, "We just really knew him as the ? Kid." Other reports suggest that, outside of the classroom, he referred to his twin brother as the ? Kid. He would even try to use the same name when signing DVDs out from the campus library, but this didn't work.
Yeah, there was one documentary I watched where some of his dorm mates suggest that, oh yeah, he was always renting movies from the library and watching them on his laptop in the darkness, and they were always like, we don't know what movies he was watching, but they always seemed quite dark. And that was the one point where I really thought, okay, they're kind of grasping at straws here. Like, there's nothing wrong with watching a movie by yourself, you know, in the comfort of your dorm room, in the dark. Yeah, they basically were trying to suggest that, it was always horror movies or particularly violent movies that he'd be watching. And, this was a clear sign that something was not quite right. But he was getting comfort out of watching a film on his laptop by himself. Again, just don't think that's too weird.
No, I don't think that's a red flag. The question mark kid sounds like it could be an offshoot from the Diary of a Wimpy Kid, same kind of series. So it's quite a nice sounding there. But apart from that, yeah, I think it's odd. Obviously, that even people offering him money to speak and stuff like that, like they're making it a thing. I think that's obviously not helpful in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, writing down his name as question mark kind of has a bit of a Prince thing about it.
No, it's sort of is a bit arrogant, but not like a bit patron. I don't know. Like, the question mark. That's very edgy.
Yeah, if it feels as if he did that, it's very showy.
Yes, yeah. He wants people to react to that.
Yeah, which is strange considering he basically wants to be invisible from everything else we see. So, and then going around saying, yeah, actually, I've got a twin brother and he's called the question mark kid. It's like,
yeah. It's at obviously now Virginia Tech. He's picked a giant of a university where he has no support system here. It's hours away from home. He doesn't know anyone there, and it seems to be here where maybe I can understand the parents thinking, oh well, he's this could be good for his confidence. This could be good for him to go and make friends and have a good future for himself. I don't think they're aware of any real deep-seated mental health issues that are going on, and he's gone there now and almost started this new life. And I know you mentioned to Dan, obviously, the red flag there with the repeating Columbine, which I completely agree with, but there's now, the things that he starts doing now are so concerning. Yeah. And seemingly out of nowhere.
I do think as well, I was trying to say before that, like, I sent the guys a link earlier to a viral video from YouTube, and it really there's something of it that reminds me of this kind of behaviour. It's the guy pretending to be the Joker in his dorm room and his roommate walking in, and it's just the most awkward interaction you've ever seen. You could see. I wouldn't be surprised for Cho being in Joker makeup and just doing the voice kind of thing.
In his first year at Virginia Tech, Cho drunkenly told his then roommate, Andy Ko, that despite his shyness and introversion, he did in fact have a girlfriend, and her name was Jelly. He claimed that she was a supermodel who lived in outer space and travelled by spaceship to visit him. It might not obviously surprise you to note that she existed only in the form of Cho's imagination, and when Andy Ko returned to the dorm suite one day after hearing this, I think obviously word had spread a little bit about, Cho had a few drinks the other night and told me he's got a girlfriend called Jelly from outer space. But still, they were I think they were made a bit suspicious about some of his behaviours early on. But one day, Andy went back to the dorm suite where Cho very quickly and angrily shooed him away, coldly informing him that Jelly was there. Cho said that Jelly affectionately called him Spanky, and so Spanky Jelly soon became his instant message screen name. It also became one of his Facebook profiles as well.
Spanky Jelly is just
it's fun to say.
America would be Spanky Jello, wouldn't it? Spanky Jello.
If I had an imaginary girlfriend, she'd probably be from outer space as well.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Multiple mouths and
tentacles.
Yeah.
Jesus. This is actually, I think there's a Simple Plan song called My Alien. I think the chorus is like, she has 2 arms to hold me and 4 legs to wrap around me.
Genius.
She's not your typical girlfriend. She's my alien. My alien.
Cool.
Oh, man.
Yeah. It's interesting lyrics. But yeah, so Spanky Jelly becomes one of this monikers that he goes by here. This wasn't the only time that Cho told Andy something quite bizarre. He also told him that he had been on holiday to North Carolina with Vladimir Putin. And not long after this, he stopped attending his therapy sessions, claiming that there was nothing wrong with him and that he no longer required treatment. So people by this point have speculated that although he had a pretty good above average IQ, he was very much socially and emotionally immature and also somewhat physically behind, other young men his age.
Is he lying because he thinks people will believe him? Is he lying just to kind of show off and try and be funny and try and be the quirky one? Or is he like lying to try and impress people?
I think it seems like at this point kind of a little of all of them. But I mean, all of this has come out when he was being relatively tipsy. Otherwise, he's keeping himself to himself. Maybe he's opening up to his dorm mates a little more than others, but I don't think they're lies you would tell to look cooler. Holiday with Putin and Spanky Jelly, the alien girlfriend. During the back end of 2005, when Cho was 21, he enrolled in a poetry class that was taught by poet and teacher Nikki Giovanni. And after a series of complaints and odd behaviour from Cho, Nikki actually threatened to resign from the university if Cho was not removed from her class. And yeah, I'd be interested to see what producer Dan thinks of this, because this is another escalation, yet another one. She referred to him as having a, quote, mean streak and displaying, quote, menacing behaviour. Firstly, Cho turned up to class wearing a backwards cap and reflective sunglasses and refused to take them off when questioned. As well as this, there were multiple reports of him photographing numerous female students under the desk. This happened to the point that many female students stopped attending the class altogether and demanded remote learning due to them all being afraid of Cho. Finally, his writings and poetry became highly disturbing, violent, and obscene. And yeah, they were showing increasingly graphic themes. When his teacher asked him to change the theme of his writing, he very coldly responded, "You can't make me." She then advised Cho to potentially seek counselling.
I mean, as we said, like, art can be a good outlet. You know, if you're going through something, you can write a song about it, write poetry about it. Doing some art could be a good way of letting it out. So I think, like, it's tricky. Obviously, when it starts getting to be like threatening and, you know, it making your classmates feel uncomfortable and things like that, obviously that has to be taken into account, as well as the teacher. The teacher feeling uncomfortable has to be taken into account, definitely. Yeah, he's starting to now become like, kind of feeding off, knowing what he's doing is making his people around him feel uncomfortable. You can't make me, that kind of behaviour. You think of the kind of the boy that wouldn't say hello for $10 is now saying this and doing this kind of behaviour. It feels like it's a big change in his character.
Surely that's enough. The photos under the desk, if that can be proven, surely that's enough for a suspension, immediate suspension. No?
I mean, Dan didn't get suspended, but I mean, back then as well, like taking pictures, is it a full-on camera or a flash? Because it's not phones like we'd have these days.
Yeah, probably.
So if you hear the shutter, like, and a big flash, it's going to be very, yeah.
The smartphone of 2005, the leading ones were the Samsung D600, the Nokia 6680, which was the first Nokia device with a front camera. Motorola had the V3 out, Nokia 9300. These were all the leading devices of 2005. So they all had cameras.
Probably about 4 pixels though. But I mean, like, that doesn't make it right. But yeah, obviously, I think, yeah, that kind of behaviour you'd imagine would just get a suspension.
So Mrs. Giovanni, the teacher, actually went to the university administration as well as the police twice regarding Cho's behaviour and his writings. The police were unwilling to help, as they suggested that due to the fact it was him essentially participating in a creative writing or poetry class, and because he didn't make explicit threats, that they couldn't actually then do anything. But again, surely the photographs could be proven.
Yeah, I think it's more about them feeling like he's a danger to people.
Yes.
Like, yeah. So yeah, the threats and all that stuff, I think, yeah, stupidly, they've just brushed the kind of photo slightly under the rug a bit. But then, yeah, it's the fact that you can't act until someone actually does something when there are signs and warning signs are there. It feels very like, obviously with us knowing what's about to happen, it's like, it just feels like, man, again, another missed red flag. Especially
if there's multiple reports of this, supposed photo taking. It's that, like you say, Ben, that should just be done.
Gone, yeah.
Yeah.
I think as well, because with him being so socially awkward, or maybe even, selectively mute at this point, he's, instead of doing things to, blend into the background, go under the radar, wearing mirrored sunglasses and a big cap on your head to class and then refusing to take it off is going to draw attention. Putting your name down on the attendance register as ? And referring to yourself as the ? Kid or whatever is also going to draw attention. And then apparently whenever he was asked to speak in class, he would speak just quiet enough so that if he was at the back of the room or whatever, it would just be like, sorry? And again, that would draw attention.
Yeah, and having an alien girlfriend called Jelly.
Yes.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking about that. I respect it, but there's no pictures of jelly.
Okay.
So the then head of department, Lucinda Roy, eventually removed Cho from the class to avoid Giovanni from resigning, and she even went as far as holding one-on-one sessions with Cho to try to help. Eventually, Lucinda herself was forced to stop these sessions as she began to fear for her own safety. She said that he often refused to speak to her or look at her, but he actually managed to take photos of her with his phone, and his writings became darker than ever before. So that's, again, you're in a room one-on-one with a student who you already have mixed vibes about. You, yeah, the camera, I'm not going to talk to you, not going to look at you, but quickly aim the camera at you, photo. She's now scared. She's tried to guide him into like different themes of his writing, which again, I guess you've got to still allow for that creative outlet, but maybe guide it to, you know, themes that do not involve killing others or making others suffer. She would claim that it got so bad that she even had to give a distress signal of a dead professor's name to her assistant in case she ever needed emergency services to be called.
Yeah, it's like a little safety word, basically, which, yeah, to call security, if you used to say it, which, I mean, the fact that that was a thing is, It's horrifying. And yeah, how uncomfortable he's making people feel, and he's kind of feeding off their energy. It seems like the more reaction he gets from these poems that are shocking, the more he's feeding off it.
Yeah, completely.
Because I can't work out if he's taking advantage of, obviously his struggles early on, social anxiety and being classified as mute and all this is sad. That stems from that, but I can't tell if he's taking advantage of that now. He's so aware of it, so he wants the attention, he wants to be a little bit weird, but knows he's almost got a safety net because he has these social difficulties, so he feels like perhaps he can get away with a lot of stuff, perhaps, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
Point. The argument would be that he's completely unaware of what he's doing, but I think I side with Dan. I think that a lot of this does seem sort of not premeditated to an extent, but everything he's supposedly doing to get out of the spotlight is putting him in the spotlight.
Yeah.
And I can't tell if that's intentional or not. Lucinda described Cho as extraordinarily lonely, but actually quite arrogant, and he could be quite obnoxious, and was also deeply, it seemed, insecure. She too advised Cho to potentially seek counselling.
Yeah, the advising thing is like, I guess you can't force someone into counselling, but a program or something that is in place to a check kind of thing would be, you would have thought by this stage with all the red flags and all the concerns they're having, it's starting to really amp up.
But the other thing is he was placed into that in middle school or junior school. He was placed in that special education class under the category of emotional disturbance, but none of that information was then stored and shared with the university, so they had no idea of his background.
Communication between education or systems, I think now obviously is a lot better than it was, but you'd have thought that kind of thing would be just basic.
As well as advising Cho to attend therapy, Lucinda Roy also notified the Division of Student Affairs, the Cook Counselling Centre, the Shifett Health Centre, the Virginia Tech Police, and the College of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences. As well as this, she informed numerous other teachers at the university to be aware of Cho's ongoing behaviours and the potential danger he posed. One other teacher recalled Cho following him back to his office, uninvited, after he suggested that he dropped his creative writing class as his work wasn't to the expected standard. He stared at him for several seconds before leaving. Lucinda Roy wrote the following about Cho in a report. He is now meeting regularly with me and Fred DeGuer rather than with Nikki. This has gone reasonably well, though all of his submissions so far have been about shooting or harming people because he's angered by their authority or by their behaviour. We're hoping he'll be able to write inside a different kind of narrative in the future, and we're encouraging him to do so. I have to admit that I'm still very worried about this student.
So yeah, I mean, from that obviously saying all of his submissions so far have been about shooting or harming people.
Yeah.
Angered by authority or by their behaviour. That, obviously, with Columbine happening not too long before as well, it's like you thought that everyone would be on high alert and extra vigilant, but yeah.
Yeah, if all of these concerns had been collated by this point, surely that would be enough for some form of intervention, and it doesn't. Even when the intervention tries to happen at a later point, it doesn't, he very much just returns to his normality the next day. So it's, terrifying.
In his years at Virginia Tech, Cho's isolation grew more pronounced and so did his rage. Although he did start to perform better academically, his social struggles continued. In an effort to help to include him, his dorm-mates would often try to bring him along to events and gatherings, but this wouldn't last long. Whilst at a student party during the first semester, Cho apparently sat in the corner of a girl's bedroom and started repeatedly stabbing the carpet with a small knife that he brought with him to the party. Like, A, don't bring a knife to the party. B, what is that behaviour? I feel like his dorm mates did actually really try to integrate him as well. Like, they tried other things and bring him along, give him a chance kind of thing. And yeah, this kind of behaviour, like, for fuck's sake.
Have you seen all those like memes of recent videos of Conor McGregor? And it was like, the meme is like, oh, can my mate come to the party? He's sound, I promise. And then there's just a video of Conor McGregor just, gurning and punching walls and stuff. Crazy. Also, if that was an upper floor dorm, imagine the neighbours below. Look like snow falling from the ceiling. Maybe.
Didn't go to uni, did you?
No.
Do you imagine the knife coming through the...
It's terrifying, isn't it?
Ben, it's not just going to be one level of floor and then you go through it.
Could have been a really long knife, though. Really long.
Well, you said small knives. You
really long,
small
but long.
So whilst he was stabbing the carpet with a knife and not going through the floor because it's not a cartoon, his roommates would watch on in bewilderment. His writings began to reflect increasingly dark and violent themes, which alarmed his teachers and peers. He also showed signs of exhibiting a deep resentment towards the more outgoing and popular students, whom he seemed to perceive as his bullies. So that's the thing that's really like people argue against. I don't know whether or not he's thinking, because he did really obsess over Columbine, whether he was thinking, oh, they were bullied or they were mistreated and I want to be the same way, the same narrative as them. It's me against the world like it was for them. But I think the sad thing in this situation is it's him and the world aren't really that bothered. Like with Chow, it's not like him against the world. It's like literally, it's like, you act out, but we're not,
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting theory. I think there's a lot more evidence to suggest that Dylan and Eric and Columbine were bullied. I remember that video of them walking through the hallways and then a bunch of people kind of shoulder barged them and stuff. So, I mean, I know it's limited evidence, but with Cho, I really don't know what to believe because there aren't a great deal of quotes after this event that suggest, oh yeah, no, actually, I really felt sorry for him. He was really, that he was bullied badly, he was treated badly. It's a lot more seems to be his convinced himself almost that this is happening.
Yeah, it's his perception with it all. But I remember before doing the research for the case, I thought I had it in my head. He was bullied, he had a lot of racist abuse, and he kind of acted out from that. But yeah, from doing the research, it doesn't seem to be half as much as kind of was led on. So the following month, his roommates actually decided to check through a couple backpacks belonging to Chow, which immediately, if you're going through your roommates' backpacks, you're obviously worried or concerned, but they found nothing more than a penknife. Despite the commitment Cho may have made or been making to Jelly, his imaginary girlfriend, Dan, this didn't sway him from showing an interest in female students at the university. Unfortunately, these interests became both disturbing and wildly inappropriate. Ben. And on 2 separate occasions, they resulted in verbal warnings from the university and campus police.
Don't say Ben. I knew that was coming.
Apparently, Cho had been stalking 2 females online, predominantly via Facebook, bombarding them with instant messages from different accounts. I'm imagining probably pokes as well, but I can't be sure, whilst also obtaining their contact information. The 2 women also believed he was following them around campus, almost constantly, which is very creepy.
Less creepy, I mean, you reference pokes. Isn't that how you met your wife, Dan?
Yep, gave her a poke. She poked back, I think, and then I poked her back, and then she didn't poke back.
Oh,
so I poked her again, and then poked her again, and she still didn't poke back. So I messaged her saying, "What's going on?"
And giving an MSN nudge. You saw real life. That's nice. I didn't even. Yeah,
thank you.
Should have put that in the best man speech. Fuck. Just made a joke about WAP instead. But yeah, Ben.
Yeah.
So Cho would change his profile picture to a question mark and refer to himself as both the question mark kid and Spanky Jelly. So he would regularly call these 2 young women at all hours of the day and night and say, hey, it's the question mark. Yeah, it's not exactly clear how he got their contact information as well. I don't know if that was consensually or he's somehow got it from a mutual party or confidential information, who knows? But yeah, he then starts not only spamming them on social media, he also now starts to call them at all hours of the day and night. He would do exactly the same thing, except he would knock on the doors of their dorms, mostly at night, and say out loud, "Hey, it's the question mark." On one instance, whilst one of the young women he was stalking was away with family, he wrote verses from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet on a wall next to her door. A day after she returned and saw it, initially, she wasn't that kind of made too uncomfortable by this. So, okay, someone's put a bit of Shakespeare down. She then goes back the next day and an additional verse had been added to it, surrounded by question marks. Cho would often try to brush this off as being his twin brother. So these were the words that were written by her dorm.
By a name, I know not how to tell thee who I am. My name, dear saint, is hateful to myself, because it is an enemy to thee. Had I it written, I would tear the word.
Which I think is very interesting, considering he's calling himself Mr. Question Mark. As if his own name is like, he hates it so much himself, if he hates his own identity. And this kind of quote is quite a poignant quote that he's chosen there.
Yeah, definitely. On another instance, Cho managed to get into one of the young women's dorm rooms without her realizing. She turned around and he was staring her straight in the eye from about a meter away. Cho immediately left the room as he realized he had frightened her. When he recalled the story to his dorm mate, he said that he, quote, only found promiscuity in her eyes. As a result of this, campus police were contacted and 2 uniformed officers made a visit to Cho's dorm. They warned him not to make any contact with either of the young women again, and he agreed. Frustratingly, the police said that as there were no actual threats of violence in those messages, much like in his creative writing, although surely talking about shooting people and hurting people is somewhat of it's a theme of violence, isn't it? It's not a specific threat though. They classed his actions as simply annoying, so at this point no further action could be taken. Later that day, Cho emailed his dorm mate Andy, "I might as well kill myself now," which was then also reported to authorities after Andy called his father about the situation. And as a result of this, Cho was essentially almost sectioned from the intervening services.
On the 13th of December 2005, Cho was escorted by police to the psychiatric hospital of Carillion, St Albans, an imminent danger to himself or others, as well as being mentally ill and in need of hospitalisation. Despite this, shockingly, Cho was released the very next day with the order of outpatient care, as he had not attended the facility voluntarily. The fact that he's been deemed as imminent danger to himself or others, and as in their words, being mentally ill and in need of hospitalisation, surely then they could say, we're deeming you as not being fit to be let out in public in the current state that you're in. So
yeah, this for me is amongst the most frustrating elements of this case. How it's just the very next day as well. It's like, no, I didn't come here voluntarily. I don't need the outpatient care. I'm going to go back to university. It's just, everything compiled about him, which I appreciate. Not all of it was readily available to be compiled, but if the sharing of information was happening in the right places at the right time, none of this would have happened.
Cho refused the outpatient care, and both the court and community services team failed to carry out the judge's orders. As a result, because Cho was not involuntarily committed to a mental health facility as an inpatient, he was still legally eligible to buy guns under Virginia law of the time.
Yeah.
Which, you just think, come on.
Is this, do you think, a failing of the system or just particular staff members in that moment in time? Or...
I mean, it sounds like because he had not attended the facility voluntarily.
Yeah.
That's a system, because it's not them going, they broke procedure by letting him out. Yeah. And the fact that you're still legally eligible to buy guns at the time because he was not involuntarily committed to a mental health facility, though they've deemed him as being mentally ill. They've deemed him as being mentally ill, but because he wasn't committed there, they go, oh, he's still legally allowed to have a gun. It's what?
This will seem like a really stupid question to ask, and I don't mean any offense by this. I'm just going to ask it anyway. In America, if you are requiring mental health services or immediate mental health support, do they still charge you like they do for hospital fees? Because in the UK, all of the referral services are completely free.
I would assume so, yes.
I'm just thinking maybe because if it was a financial element to it, maybe they're like, okay, yeah, go.
Yeah,
I don't mean that to sound as offensive as it sounds.
No, that's not at all offensive, and it's a good question. I think basically from, walking around New York, you see a lot of homeless people who are suffering with mental health difficulties, and essentially the only thing that makes me think that it's not treatment for them is because it costs money. So it can't just be, it's anything that's readily available, which I think is sad. And yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think if they went through it, but I don't think the reason he didn't do it was because of the financial side of things. But yeah, it's not I think it's a financial cost.
Yeah, you do have to pay if you're such.
I've just seen online.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
But that is mainly the homeless crisis in America, isn't it? Based around that, isn't it? I'd have thought.
The average cost to deliver care for Medicare, for example, for 11 days is $8,500.
Yeah,
you can see why people don't go, and then they just spiral because they can't afford it.
You can also expect to pay $100 to $200 for a 1 hour session of therapy without insurance. That said, maybe he was covered by his mum's insurance. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, feel free to correct us if anything we're saying is wrong there, or if we're looking at it in the wrong way. But I think it's valid. It is believed that these concerns relating to Cho's behaviours and his mental health were reported to police. However, it is speculated that when police tried to access any of his background information, the information was not accessible or was privileged to doctor-patient confidentiality and therefore could not be released. This resulted in Cho being able to remain at the university and wander freely amongst its campus despite potentially being a very obvious threat to safety for both himself and the general public. And it also resulted in him being able to purchase weapons.
In February and March of 2006, weeks before the shooting took place, Cho was able to purchase both a .22 caliber Walther P22 semi-automatic pistol, which he ordered online via TGS.com, collected in store. As well as this, he also purchased a 9mm Glock 19 semi-automatic pistol, which he purchased at Roanoke Firearms in person. He passed background checks for both purchases without disclosing the fact that he had recently been placed in a psychiatric hospital by police referral, and he was also able to obtain 50 jacketed hollow point bullets for just $10. Over the coming weeks, he made several additional purchases of ammunition via his eBay account, which was Blazers5505, and he also purchased cargo pants, a hunter's vest, a hunting knife, a hammer, gun holsters, and gloves. As well as this, he purchased large locking chains from Home Depot. He was later seen videotaping himself in the car park of a gun range by employees after spending a few hours there practicing his aim. And yeah, everything he's doing here as well, I later learned he's put all of this on a credit card. Obviously, he has no intention of paying that off, but he's amassed a really concerning amount of weaponry here at this point, and specifically going for hollow point bullets as well, jacketed ones.
$10 for 50.
Yeah.
Mad.
So almost exactly a month before the shooting, 23-year-old Cho, who was speculated to still be a virgin at this point, made the decision to hire an escort. The pair met at a motel in Roanoke, where the escort, a lady by the name of Chastity Fry, claimed that she danced for Cho for 15 minutes before making the decision to leave. According to her, Cho became visibly furious, but very quietly said, "I paid you for an hour." She then continued dancing, but Cho touched her and tried to grab her, by which point she pushed him away and told him to stop doing that before leaving. The escort described Cho as timid, dorky, and a little pushy. It is believed he potentially met with one additional escort the following week. After this encounter, which may have been some form of bizarre bucket list item, Cho completed his manifesto and completes his preparations. He records his final video and seals his manifesto package shut. He says the following in his final video.
Do you know what it feels like to be spit on your face and have trash shoved down your throat? Do you know what it feels like to dig your own grave? Do you know what it feels like to have your throat slashed from ear to ear? Do you know what it feels like to be torched alive? Do you know what it feels like to be humiliated and be impaled upon on a cross and left to bleed to death for your amusement? You have never felt a single ounce of pain your whole life. Yet you want to inject as much misery in your life as you can, just because you can. You had everything you wanted. Your Mercedes wasn't enough, you brats. Your golden necklaces weren't enough, you snobs. Your trust fund wasn't enough. Your vodka and cognac weren't enough. All your debaucheries weren't enough. Those weren't enough to fulfill your hedonistic needs.
And it is here that we move to the timeline of the Virginia Tech shooting.
Friday the 13th of April 2007. Anonymous bomb threats are called to Durham, Torgerson, and Whitmore Halls of Virginia Tech. Additional written bomb threats are found at Norris Hall and Suite 2121 of Harper Hall, which was Cho's dormitory. The following day, numerous witnesses observed a suspicious-looking man with a dark hooded sweatshirt sprinting away from the entrance of Norris Hall. Upon further investigation, chains were found to have been keeping the door shut. And could this have been a practice run or an abandoned attempt? The rest of the weekend went by as normal, with Cho calling his family on Sunday evening.
Monday 16th April 2007. In the early hours of what was a bitterly cold, blustery morning, Virginia Tech's sprawling, snow-covered campus was peaceful and quiet as most students were either still asleep in their dorms or beginning their mornings, preparing for another ordinary Monday. Some hurriedly finished homework, others brewed coffee, and a few had already headed to the morning classes. The typical hum of student life echoed through West Ambler Johnston Hall, where friends exchanged casual morning greetings, completely unaware of the horror that would soon unfold. As the sun slowly started to rise over Blacksburg, students walked between buildings and chatted in hallways, blissfully unaware of the impending tragedy that would forever change their lives. In mere moments, normality would give way to chaos, and the serenity of the morning would be shattered by the sound of gunfire. In his manifesto, Cho begins,
"Oh, the happiness I could have had mingling among you hedonists, being counted as one of you. If only you didn't fuck the living shit out of me. You could have been great. I could have been great. Ask yourself what you did to me to have made the clean slate. Only if you could have been the victim of your reprehensible and wicked crimes, you Christian Nazis, you would have brute restrained your animal urges to fuck me."
Two of Cho's roommates recalled him pulling an all-nighter that night, with one witnessing him at a laptop around 5 a.m, just in his underwear, whilst another witnessed him applying acne cream and brushing his teeth at around 5:30 a.m. The acne cream's interesting, isn't it? Because he's not really thinking about the longevity.
Yeah, it's just part of his normal routine, isn't it? It's just another day.
Yeah. Cho then gets dressed, picks up his backpack and leaves. Neither recall seeing him after 6 a.m, though he was observed apparently waiting outside an entrance to the West Ambler Johnston Hall at approximately 7 a.m. At 7:15, 18-year-old first-year student Emily Hilscher, known to her friends as Pixie, is dropped off at a campus by her boyfriend. Cho shot and killed her at close range in her dormitory, and also shot and killed 22-year-old fifth-year student advisor Ryan Christopher Clark, who was investigating the disturbance.
So yeah, there's so much going on here, and it's one of those instances where the mass shooting element, there's two kind of separate events here. So these two individuals, although I don't think maybe Ryan Christopher Clark was ever part of his plan, you could argue none of these people were ever part of his plan. This is there's a bizarre series of events here. So number one, Cho could get into this building because his mailbox, although he didn't live in that building, his mailbox was located in there. So he had a special key card that could allow him to get in there from after 7:30 a.m. However, this is 7 a.m. or 7:15 a.m. So he's got in there. He's either waited for the door to open and then snuck in or whatever. But for whatever reason, this Emily Hilscher has become his first victim. There's no mention of her in his manifesto. Her friends said that she'd never heard of him, didn't know who he was. There's other people that believe he was in love with her.
I had theories that she had turned him down, but it's I think that maybe that's just people trying to make sense as to why it happened, but it does feel very pointed and very
much
purposeful, doesn't it? It doesn't seem like that it's just a coincidence that it's happened.
Yeah, completely. And there's lots of speculation on they were complete strangers, or but he's gone there. He's gone into her dorm specifically and waited for her to arrive. It's almost as if he knew she was going to arrive at that time as well. So for me, I'm much more inclined to believe it was completely, pointed and premeditated.
Well, the whole idea about the stalking, you'd say that could be stalking and figuring out behaviours and certain patterns, and then it could be completely planned from that side of things.
Yeah, completely. And both of them, it's such a tragic loss of life, but Ryan Clark was there trying to help and has just simply been murdered for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The other thing is, Cho now goes off for a few hours and doesn't resume the shooting until almost like an hour and a half. He leaves one bloody footprint in that area. Otherwise, there's a chance that scene might not have been immediately uncovered.
Yeah. Cho continued in his manifesto.
"You could be at home right now eating your fucking caviar and your fucking cognac, had you not ravenously raped my soul. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Can you feel the pain that you fucked us in, you descendants of Satan? Well, can you feel it? All the shit you've given me, right back at you with hollow points. Don't you wish you just finished me off when you had the chance? Don't you just wish you killed me?
At 7:15 a.m, the first 911 call was made reporting gunfire heard at Virginia Tech, but it would take an agonizing 2 hours and 11 minutes for students, teachers, and campus staff to be notified of an active shooter being present on site, and this only came in the form of email. After killing Hilscher and Clark, Cho calmly returned to his dorm room, where he changed out of his blood-stained clothing, reloaded his weapons, and left what has been described as a disturbing note on his desk. He then heads to the Blacksburg post office, where he mails a package to NBC News. The postage was $14.40. It was time-stamped at 9:01 a.m. The package contains a lengthy 1,800-word manifesto, 27 QuickTime videos, almost 10 minutes of audio, and 43 photographs that explain his motives for the shootings. Many of the photos were of him brandishing guns towards the camera, also holding guns to himself. One showed him holding a hammer, and another showed him with a knife. There was people speculating that he was trying to reenact a horror movie with the hammer.
Thor?
Not 4, no.
Home Improvement.
So there's speculation that one particular photo he's trying to recreate a scene from Old Boy in the way that he's holding the camera, but he's holding the hammer with Cho is holding the hammer with 2 hands, whereas the guy from Old Boy is holding the hammer with 1 hand. He then returns to campus to continue with his dreadful plans. Police arrive at the scene at 7:30 a.m, where it is believed that they found the bodies of Clark and Hilscher. And after speaking to Heather Howe, who was Hilscher's roommate, suspicion is immediately placed on what was described as her gun-collecting boyfriend, Carl Thornhill. So basically they learned that Carl had dropped off his girlfriend Emily at the university that morning. Her friend Heather had speculated that Carl, he's a collector of guns, he regularly goes to shooting ranges, and immediately police put that together and say, right, he's done this, he's killed both of them, so they immediately try and track him down. So they learn that he attends another nearby university, and they basically rush to apprehend him, suspecting him to be responsible for both deaths. As a result, no active shooter is expected to be on site, and classes begin at 8 a.m. as normal. Which for Cho, you couldn't have wished for a better situation there.
You can't just... I find that absolutely... I mean, unless there's more information we don't know about. Was there anything with Carl that shown behaviour before inappropriate and people said straight away, he's been threatening her. Other than he has guns, which in America is relatively normal. You can't just go, okay, that's definitely going to be him, so let's just don't worry about it. He's not at the school. We know he's not there. We know where he is, so let's just carry on as normal. I find that fucking mad.
9:05 a.m. Having returned to campus, Cho is spotted entering Norris Hall, an engineering and science building, where he then proceeds to chain lock the 3 main entrances to the building from the inside. This meant that nobody could enter the building, and more importantly for Cho, nobody could get out. He added a note to one of the doors, which said that a bomb will go off if the door is opened. On one of his arms, the words Axe Ishmael was written, a name whose significance has not been determined, but might be a biblical allusion. People guessed Axe Ishmael symbolises Cho's desire to destroy American civilization and escape from it. According to Webster's English Dictionary, Ishmael has a meaning of exile or outcast, so others suspect Cho chose the words as a metaphor for himself.
Again, it's one of those ones that gets people... It's going to lead to speculation, isn't it? It's a bit like calling himself the question mark. It's a bit mysterious and unusual, and yeah... I mean, early on in his life as well, the pastor said he had a great understanding of the Bible. So, that could be a really literal interpretation as well. But it's quite bizarre. So Cho continued in his manifesto.
You had 100 billion chances and ways to have avoided today, but you decided to spill my blood. You forced me into a corner and gave me only one option. The decision was yours. Now you have blood on your hands that will never wash off. You apostle of sin. Congratulations. You have succeeded in extinguishing my life. Vandalising my heart wasn't enough for you. Raping my soul wasn't enough for you. Committing emotional sodomy on me wasn't enough for you. Every single second wasted on your wanton hedonism and menacing sadism could have been used to prevent today. Ask yourselves, what was I doing all this time? All these months, hours, seconds? If only you could have been the victim of your crimes. If only you could have been the victim.
Yeah. So he's there from his writings and from the videos, the now infamous videos of himself. There's so much genuine anger, hatred, aggression in his voice and the words that he chooses to use. He does often make sort of biblical references, which kind of tie back to his childhood. But he's just basically accusing the rest of the world of ruining his life, killing his soul, vandalizing his heart. And there is genuine venom and hatred in his voice. For someone as well that as a child had, a great deal of difficulty stringing sentences together, or was at least selective about it, they make for haunting watches, don't they?
Mm. Like a Stephen King range of Casios.
Yes.
Haunting watches. 9:26 a.m., more than 2 hours after the first two victims were murdered, Virginia Tech sends an email to students and faculty informing them of the shootings at West Ambler Johnston Hall, advising them to stay indoors and to be cautious. At this time, the university does not anticipate further violence, assuming the threat has been contained, and police have apprehended Carl Thornhill, suspecting him of murdering his girlfriend and her friend.
So imagine if you're Carl in this situation and you've just dropped your girlfriend off at university, you've headed towards yours, you're suddenly massively outnumbered by police, apprehended aggressively, I imagine, and they are accusing you of murdering your girlfriend and one other person. How do you even start to comprehend that?
Yeah, immediately, obviously, you've just found out your girlfriend's been killed. That's immediately like life, just like on the floor. And then you're like, and I am the main suspect. Like, that must be, you can't even begin to comprehend how that would be, how that would feel. Even when the police, when they find out that it is not him, the danger that the other students are in as well.
Yeah, 100%.
At 9:42 a.m, a 911 call is made by students within Norris Hall to alert police that more gunshots have been heard and there were possibly an active shooter on campus. Cho then begins shooting students and faculty in classrooms and hallways. Student Zach Pekowitz, who was in class at the time, recalled the following.
After the initial gunshots, we just thought it was some construction at first, and then once we heard the girl scream, it all set in.
You were in a classroom. What happened next?
Basically, we heard the first few gunshots, didn't quite register what it was. Then we initially heard a girl scream, and two of the girls in my class looked out the hall and saw a guy coming out into the hall room, into the hallway with a gun pointed down to the ground. They slammed the door shut and just told everybody. Everybody kind of went into a panic, didn't know what to do. I hid behind the teacher's podium and then realized, there's nothing blocking this door. He's just going to come in. So I said, we need to barricade this door. Two of my classmates got up and helped me, and we just held a table there. And he eventually, meanwhile, all these gunshots are going on. He eventually came to our door, tried to open the door, didn't go, so he tried to shoulder his way in. Got the door open about 6 inches, and we all had to slam it back shut on him. And that's when he put two bullets into the center of the door, thinking we were up against it, trying to close him out. And he then reloaded. I was right against the ground, right against the door. He reloaded his clip, and I thought he was coming in for a second round. But for the grace of God, he just kept going and didn't try to get back in there.
Students and teachers in the middle of their lessons were interrupted by the sudden sharp crack of gunfire echoing through the hallways. Cho methodically combs through the building, killing and wounding anyone in his path. Cho moves from classroom to classroom, executing students and faculty with a pair of semi-automatic handguns. Among the victims are Professors Liviu Librascu, Kevin Granata, and Jocelyn Kucher-Nowak, who were all murdered while trying to shield students from gunfire. Cho has to frequently pause to reload his two handguns, each of which carry 17 bullets at a time, having 400 rounds on him, in the form of dozens of 10 to 15 round clips. During this rampage, he fired more than 175 bullets. He shot a total of 47 people, killing 30 of them. Many others were injured whilst trying to flee the building via the broken windows of the upper floor.
So for some more context here, Virginia Tech is obviously a huge university, and day and residential student attendance can range anywhere from 14,000 to 35,000 people. Norris Hall in particular had a busy section of classrooms and laboratories housing a large number of students at any given time. Whilst the shooting was occurring, those inside could hear muffled gunshots, screaming, and the cries of pain, all as the horrifying sound of footsteps grew closer. As panic set in, some tried to barricade doors with desks and chairs, whilst others began breaking windows. And they did this because they realised that escaping through the shattered glass was their only chance of survival. Several students jumped from the second floor windows, injuring themselves as they hit the ground, but preferring the pain of the fall over the terror they knew was closing in. Students and teachers were left with the agonizing decision to make. Should they run, should they hide, or should they try somehow to fight back? Cho continued in his manifesto.
To you sadistic snobs, I may be nothing but a piece of dog shit. You have vandalised my heart, raped my soul, and torched my conscience again and again. You thought it was one pathetic void life that you were extinguishing. Thanks to you, I die, like Jesus Christ, to inspire generations of the weak and defenceless people, my brothers, sisters, and children, that you fuck. Whoa.
So the thing I don't understand is there's, as I said, there's so much aggression, violence, hatred, genuine hatred in his language here. And if his motive is truly that he's been a victim of being bullied all these years and he is unleashing his wrath or avenging those that have wronged him, he's firing at people completely indiscriminately. He's killing other people that likely have been bullied themselves. He's killing teachers that are there to help others. He's not necessarily, where you could argue potentially with some elements of Columbine, they were targeting jocks and people with specific clothing on, although they also did not stick to that. I just find that really bizarre about Cho. And that's what leads me to think, was he bullied? Was he not bullied? Because he's killing males, females, the elderly, younger. He's killing people trying to run, trying to hide. It's really hard for me to buy into his narrative that he was bullied.
I mean, the poetry earlier on, it was saying that he was acting out or saying he wanted to seek revenge on the authority. So teachers obviously would fall under that. But to me, it's just a case of I'm hurting, therefore I want the world to hurt as well. I'm just going to take this out on absolutely everyone. And I mean, some of the stories, like with the teachers, like blocking the doors, able to prevent him from coming through or coming through after a delayed amount of time, so they were able to jump out of windows. I mean, these windows as well are 20 foot high, so a lot of them were injuring themselves, breaking legs, jumping out. There's some people too scared to jump out of the window. I mean, that's a horrible choice to make. Do you want to stay in the classroom and take your chances, or jump out of that window? And it's just the sheer amount of bullets used, and especially with the weaponry that he was using. I mean, again, not a gun guy, not really that knowledgeable, but it's not like he's walking around with automatic rifles. These were like, after 17 bullets, he had to reload. Obviously got two of them, but if police were quicker to act, or if there was a bit more urgency, not saying there would be an urgent, but you know what I mean, there would have been chances there with breaks of fire, and that it could have been intervened a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And like we said, it's with all the kind of warning signs and missed opportunities, it just feels like, this could have been prevented.
Yeah, completely. And it's just in a matter of 9 minutes, 30 additional people have been murdered, so many more injured. And we don't want to breeze past that, but all of those people had families, they had stories, they had promise of what they wanted to do with their lives. Majority of them were students, young people with futures. Others were teachers protecting their students. It's horrific. And as Tom said, there were people jumping, there were people holding doors shut, there were people playing dead. And Cho didn't care who you were or what you were doing. He was just firing rapidly as he could with the handguns. And completely indiscriminately. And it's, they're always so fucking hard to cover, aren't they, mass shootings? It's so bleak and horrifying.
9:45 a.m. Police and emergency services are dispatched to the scene. Initially, officers have difficulty entering the building due to the multiple chain doors, and they could do nothing but listen to the sound of gunshots, screaming and broken glass. I mean, it would feel as if police would be equipped with equipment to deal with blockages on doors and whatnot. I mean, I'm sure it's not the first time that's a thing.
I wonder how seriously they took that note as well that said, if you open this door, the bomb will go off. I don't know how seriously they would have had to consider that.
Yes, very true. Inside the building, the air was thick with the smell of gunpowder, and the once pristine hallways were now a site of absolute mayhem. Blood was spilling down stairways and ceilings, whilst bullet holes and gunpowder residue coated the walls and doors. Many students were still hiding or jumping for their lives, whilst the police had no identity for the shooter. At 9:50 a.m, approximately 8 minutes after the shooting started, police finally broke through the chain doors of Norris Hall after firing at them with a shotgun. As they close in, Cho fires one last round, placing the gun to his temple and taking his own life in classroom 211. Investigators believe that the sound of the shotgun will have alerted Cho to their arrival. leading him to realise that he only had time to fire one last shot. In total, by this point, he had killed 30 people at Norris Hall and wounded 17 others. Police found his body sprawled in the stairway, his face unrecognisable. The officers shouted, shoot it down, black tag." Black tag is police coded for dead. At the same time, a second email announcing a gunman is loose on campus, stay in buildings until further notice, stay away from all windows, was sent to all Virginia Tech email addresses. Loudspeakers broadcasted a similar message, but it was already far too late. Cho concluded it in his manifesto.
As the time approached, I wished for a last-minute miracle and discard this mission you've given me. Heaven knows I wouldn't hurt a single leaf of a flower. But when the time came, I did it. I had to. What other choices did you give me? All this time. You never know that a human being is capable of doing until you fuck him to the edge. When you're raped of everything, you've got nothing to lose. Let the revolution begin. Die, you descendants of Satan. Fuck you and die now. I am Axe Ishmael. I am the anti-terrorist of America.
What was that from again, Ben?
We speculated that there was some significance from his time studying the Bible. People guessed that Axe Ishmael symbolizes Cho's desire to destroy American civilization and to escape from it. According to Webster's English Dictionary, Ishmael has a meaning of exile or outcast. So others suspect Cho chose those words as a metaphor for himself. And I said to Dan, I was like, he's gone from the question mark to Axe Ishmael. He likes to keep kind of some element of mystique or elaborate meaning, I suppose.
The massacre ends with Cho's suicide. The entire second shooting spree at Norris Hall lasted approximately 9 minutes. Police begin securing the building and evacuating the wounded. Emergency services flock to the scene, as do the local media. Other portions of the university are placed on lockdown and eventually evacuated, as investigators become concerned that another shooter may still be active in the area. With that, I think probably with the amount of carnage that one man has done, it wouldn't be strange to think that it can't just be one person. Over the next hour, the university sends 2 more warning emails to teachers and students, and news reports begin to emerge about the shooting. Parents and other family members desperately attempt to contact their loved ones, with many calls and messages going unanswered. News stations begin to report that the killer has ended his life for a gunshot to the face and that he was wearing a bulletproof vest. It is not clear who leaked this information. Virginia Tech officials hold a press conference confirming that multiple casualties have occurred. The news conference confirmed the number of weapons used and a possible identification of the suspect that would not be released at that time. The scale of the tragedy begins to emerge, and the police begin to speculate that the shooter is a Virginia Tech student.
On April 17th, 2007, during the morning after the shooting, Virginia Tech Police Department released the name of the shooter as Seung-Hui Cho and confirmed the death toll of 33 people, including Cho. At 2 p.m., then President George W. Bush attends a vigil at Cassell Coliseum in Virginia. Later that day, NBC News receives the package that Cho mailed before the second shooting spree. It contains a video of Cho explaining his motives, along with photos of him brandishing weapons and an extensive manifesto, which obviously we've quoted throughout the episode, which was filled with anger and his grievances against Western society. Virginia Tech subsequently announced that classes would be cancelled for the remainder of the week to allow students the time that they need to grieve and seek assistance as needed. A candlelit vigil is held later that night. April 18th, 2007, so the following day, NBC News makes the bizarre and highly controversial decision to air portions of Cho's video manifesto, which I know we've obviously quoted throughout the episode from it, but airing it so soon after the massacre and showing, obviously images of the shooter, I can certainly understand the anger and hurt that this caused at the time. It sparked controversy over whether or not it is ethical to broadcast his messages. As well as this, the airing of the footage leads to debates about the media's role in amplifying the voices of mass killers. So straight away, thousands of people complain to the network, whilst family members who have lost loved ones in the massacre start to plead with broadcasters to stop airing the footage through fears of it leading to a possible copycat shooter.
I think with the manifesto, he's obviously released that because he wants it to be read to other people and he wants his message to be spread. I think, obviously, we've got portions of it throughout this episode, which I feel, this is for educational purposes. People want to learn about the case, they'll listen to this case, whereas it's not being broadcast to absolutely everybody by ABC News, for example. So I feel like it's slightly different. I know some people might think pot kettle with us talking about it, but I feel like the news going, okay, this guy, he's given us this stuff which he wants us to broadcast, but we'll do what he wants us to do. And also just showing the face of the killer so soon after with that and the message he wants to send. I feel, it seems to be very naive by the news station. And I mean, obviously they're doing it because they think, we've got the material, this is going to get so much attention, but it's the wrong kind of attention.
April 20th, 2007, University Memorial Service. Virginia Tech holds a large memorial service to honour the victims. Thousands of people, including students, faculty, families of the victims, and public officials, attend the service. In a statement issued on behalf of the family by Cho's older sister, Cho Sung-kyung, shared the following. Our family is so very sorry for my brother's unspeakable actions. It is a terrible tragedy for all of us. He has made the world weep. We are a living nightmare. We pray for their families and loved ones who are experiencing so much excruciating grief, and we pray for those who are injured, and for those whose lives are changed forever because of what they witnessed and experienced. She then went on to read the names of the 32 victims whose lives were lost. Daniel Alejandro Perez Cueva, Kevin P. Granata, Matthew Gregory Gwyneltney, Caitlin Millar Hammeran, Jeremy Michael Herbstritt, Rachel Elizabeth Hill, Emily Jane Hilscher, Jarrett Lee Lane, Matthew Joseph Laporte, Henry J. Lee, Levu Lebrescu, G.V. Leganathan, Partahi Memora Halamone Lumbanturan, Lauren Ashley McCain, Daniel Patrick O'Neill, Juan Roman Ortiz, Minal Hiralal Panchal, Erin Nicole Peterson, Michael Stephen Pole, Julia Kathleen Pride, Mary Karen Reed, Rima Joseph Samaha, Wahid Mohammed Shalan, Leslie Geraldine Sherman, Maxine Shelley Turner, Nicole Regina White.
It just doesn't feel real, does it? I mean, going through those names, all because of one man's actions. And I mean, as I said, it's easy with hindsight, but it's just definitely a case where you feel there was enough evidence there to prevent this from happening. I don't think it's wild of us to say that. I don't think we're the first people to say that. Yeah, it's truly heartbreaking just seeing the names on there with ages ranging from 18 to 76. Like Ben said, he didn't discriminate. But yeah, obviously our hearts go out to the victims.
There's a really amazing website called We Remember Virginia Tech, where if you go on it, there's biographies to every victim. So we'll add that to our Facebook group, I Could Murder a Podcast listeners and discussion group. And it's you can click on any of the victims. It will then tell you all about them, the life that was taken from them, and how their family wishes them to be remembered. And there's each of them, as I said earlier, has a story, and they are missed and loved by everyone in their life. It's heartbreaking. And I mean, there was some response and actions taken as a result of this massacre. So we're going to move on to discuss that just before wrapping up. So in May of 2007, in response to the massacre, Virginia Tech announces plans to overhaul its campus safety protocols. This includes installing new emergency notification systems, increasing campus security, and improving communication between university authorities and law enforcement, which I think, that last part, although all of these changes are positive changes, that last part was crucial in this case, where they had definitely a lapse. University authorities and law enforcement both came under extreme scrutiny for their response and communication throughout the event. Between 2007 and 2009, the Virginia Tech massacre prompts a national conversation regarding mental health, gun control, and campus safety. Then Governor of Virginia, Tim Kaine, commissions an independent review panel to investigate the events leading up to the massacre. And this is where so much information about Cho's background, his family, his upbringing, his struggles, his behaviours, his concerning behaviours as he grew older, come to light. The report would go on to reveal multiple critical failures in communication between mental health providers, law enforcement, and the university. In the wake of the shooting, federal legislation is passed to close loopholes in the National Background Check System. The NICS Improvement Amendments Act of 2007 now requires states to report individuals with mental health issues to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System to prevent them from purchasing firearms. So again, yeah, it's just so... He went from leaving a psychiatric hospital to within a matter of days purchasing 2 weapons and completely bypassing their background checks there without issue. It was also revealed that Cho spent several thousands of dollars preparing for the attacks, all of which was charged to a credit card.
So yeah, a little bit of aftermath now. Virginia Tech is, and we hate to use the word currently, but it's currently the deadliest school shooting in US history, having 5 more deaths and 15 more injuries than the second ranked Sandy Hook. And we're obviously not looking at a league table or anything like that, but yeah, it's currently deadliest school shooting.
So one case that came up when researching Virginia Tech was the 1927 Bath School disaster. And I had never ever heard of this whatsoever, but it's a bizarre series of events and a very heartbreaking series of events. And this occurred when a man by the name of Andrew Kehoe became disgruntled after not being re-elected as school treasurer of the school board. He then made the decision to murder his wife as well as a series of family pets and set off a series of bombs at the school as a result. This ultimately claimed the lives of 44 people, 38 of them being children and 6 of them adults.
So TGS.com, the website that Cho used to buy his gun, also sold weapons to Stephen Kamirzak, who was responsible for the 2008 Northern Illinois University shooting, in which he killed 5 people and injured 21 before killing himself, as well as George Sodini, who was responsible for the 2009 Collier Township shooting, in which he killed 3 people and injured 9 others at an LA fitness gym before killing himself. At the time that TGS.com sold the pistols to Cho, the perpetrator of the Virginia Tech massacre, the company operated 50 websites and had 10 employees. The company ceased to trade in 2012. So, I mean, they still carried on for an awful long amount of time afterwards.
I think they had grown after that as well. At one point, they had hundreds of websites that they sold across, and I think it was sort of just under 100 employees as well. So they seemed to somehow grow in
the only thing is, if they're legally trading, it's not the website. If they're acting within the law,
yeah,
it's the law is the thing that needs to be looked at and addressed, isn't it? So, but yeah, it's just...
Well, that's it. He seemed to be go through the checks when he collected it in person rather than doing the checks online, which I assume is that's protocol, that's typical protocol, I assume.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and the thing about, obviously we said before, like with the ripple effect and all the families affected, I mean, obviously Cho's family as well was affected, and apparently since this, they've pretty much got into hiding. They're very rarely seen out. They keep themselves to themselves, but pretty much have disappeared and just, avoiding anyone and everyone really, which you can understand the guilt that they feel. And sadly, you feel like they didn't realise that this was within him, and this is a very different son and brother to what they thought they had.
I mean, when they actually ended up seeing the his now infamous series of videos, that his sister ended up saying, "All my family said that was not the Seung-Hui we knew. It was the first time that we saw him speaking in full sentences." Which, imagine that.
Yeah, that is. I mean, yeah, you can imagine them seeing someone that they don't recognise at all, and obviously the behaviours afterwards. That is something that they never saw. And sadly, it's a failure in the fact that, and I don't want to keep saying it, but it's a failure in the fact that people did see this within him, and he did write about wanting to do this, he did write poetry about wanting to do this, but because he didn't act on it in any way, they weren't able to reprimand him or anything like that. And it's just feels, you'd hope that there's something in place now. But as I said, sadly, this wasn't the last school shooting to happen in America. Relatively regular occurrence. A lot of comments we get on our podcast, people say, there's now just a normal thing to hear a report about it, and they're kind of not numb to it, but it just feels like that's just part of life now.
I agree. They just feel, anytime you get a news alert now, it just feels kind of commonplace, which is mad.
Well, I mean, just to give you a fresh idea, because I think I went on this website the last time we did a mass shooting on the podcast, and I think a mass shooting is classified as 3 or more injured or killed. And yeah, just to give you some perspective, mass shootings in 2024, the last one was September 29th. In fact, 2 on the same day. Then September 28th, 2 on the same day. 27th, 26th, 25th, 21st, 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 21st. And practically every day in September, with more than 3 people injured, and quite often people killed.
Yeah, that's truly, when you hear that, that's just, yeah, it's how do they go on to solve that problem, and throwing more guns at it doesn't seem to fit.
Also, to know that, for example, on September 21st, there was a mass shooting where 17 people were injured and 4 people died. So recent. And that's just one stat in the last month.
Yeah.
Of tens upon tens of mass shootings. It's
the fact that it's not world news. Like, it's one of those things where, you know, if it happened in the UK, that'd be everywhere. You know, it doesn't happen over here, but the fact that it happens there so regularly, I didn't realise it was that regularly. So yeah, that's kind of shocked me further.
So I know we touched on this maybe in our Sandy Hook episode, but it was the fact that I think almost all states in America now require active shooter related training in schools for teachers, for officers, for children in some cases as young as elementary school level. And just the fact that that's kind of their normal, you know? They have to be prepared for something like that could happen.
There's even the gun safety training and the things they have to learn. Like, this is the protocol if it happens. That to me, like, baffles me. Like, it makes me think of when you hear about when wars were going on and how they were taught to, like, you know, duck and dive and all this stuff. And it just feels like that's everyday kind of thought in the back of your head that could happen. It's just terrifying. And also, when you're teaching that, you're then making people aware of that kind of thing has happened before, and you kind of, it's like an ever-growing circle. You're going, oh, this has happened before. Oh, if they're slightly interested in that, they'll research it, they'll find this stuff out, and then it's just like, you never know. But you hope somehow it gets resolved, but yeah, you just can't see that. So that is the case of the Virginia Tech massacre. A long old episode, but you know, it definitely needed due care and attention, and yeah, a truly horrific one, but a big case we wanted to end the series on. And yeah, that is the end of series 10.
Yeah, if could just personally add a massive thank you to anyone that's either supported or listened to the podcast in any way, shape or form over this series. We appreciate it so much. There's been loads of people recently saying that they've just discovered us, which is beautiful to hear. So a massive, you know, thank you to anyone for sharing or telling people to listen or watch us. We really appreciate it. We can't wait to get our heads down and kind of come back with a new, fresh series 11.
Definitely. And yeah, a huge shout out to the people behind the scenes, Ollie Jones, Ben Bonsey, Chloe Markey and Ben Aiken, the people behind the scenes, but big shout out to them, because without them we would not be able to cope, so big shout out to those guys. But yes, it's been a great series, and we're going to go away for a little while.
Yeah, I know Tom mentioned at the start of the episode, this was 120 main channels. So while we go away for our break and get ready for series 11, if you just can't get enough, at the time of recording we have around 180 additional episodes on our website. 400 Yeah, it does feel like 400.
It does, trust me.
Feel. But we have got a website where you can go and watch in video format all 180 additional exclusive episodes over there. It's also available on Apple Podcasts, so why not check those out? We've done some fascinating cases lately: the murder of Dimebag Darrell, the torture murder of Sylvia Likens, the murder of Sophie Lancaster. There's been some really heartbreaking cases as well, and we do requests on there, and it really helps to support the podcast if you can. If not, we appreciate you so much, and thank you for listening or watching.
Definitely, and just a quick one that keep an eye out, because over the next couple of months there'll be a couple of new things appearing over on the merch store, but also on Spotify. So keep an eye on that. Yes, maybe we're opening the door to maybe accessing some minisodes via Spotify.
No way.
Yeah. So keep an eye out for that.
Take my money.
Why is that covered in shit?
No.
So keep an eye out for that, because we might be, what's all this popping up on here? You'll see things with a little padlock on there. It'll be very self-explanatory, but you can access it free Spotify app soon.
And boys, can I just say a big, massive well done to you two. I think people have obviously realised by now that I'm starting to read more on the podcast, and it's incredibly difficult. So your job is tough, it's difficult, it's laborious, but you've done a fucking fantastic job. So well done, you two.
Well done to you, Dan, and well done to you, Ben, and I would say it, well done to me. But yes, guys, it's been a great series, and we're excited to come back with series 11. Energized, got a lot of good ideas and big ideas already. And as I said, keep an eye on our socials, because we'll be posting things on there with updates. And we hope you guys look after yourselves, take care. We won't be away for long. And like we always say,
we say this all the time.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Well, unless...
Pow.
Pow. Unless it's...
playing basketball in Westfield, Adelphia.
Yeah, Westfield, Adelphia. Forgot about that one.
Westfield, Adelphia.
Westfield, Adelphia. Playing a character for you.
He's not playing a character.
I like to make them both laugh.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
There's a very thin line between that character and you. Like that thin floor in that university with the knife going straight through it.
Yeah, don't put knives through your ceiling, especially if you've got thin floors.
Great tip there, Ben.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Hey.
see you later.
Ta-da.
2-pip.